Get this going. Try to put some videos. Good. That's good. This is Give It All You Got Man Time. You're listening to Playing Forward podcast with King L. Bay, dropping this knowledge on you, right? I'm just gonna do as many videos. I'm finna start just bombarding the airwaves with the YouTube and everything that we're doing here on the YouTube channel, and start dropping this science on y'all, right? Family. What's happening? You know, what's happening, family? Trying to get everybody into the mix. Go. We're going to drop the science on y'all today, right? We're going to talk about the doctrine of incorporation, right? We got to be careful about what you're doing when you're incorporating, right? So we're going to talk about the doctrine. Because y'all, there's too many people, there's too much disingenuous information. Everybody is trying to figure out some stuff. So I keep trying to tell y'all, it's about contracts. You want to be a business, you want to be a corporation, and you don't want to have any personal liability. You want to give all of that personal liability up because they're not going to. Why would you? They took away certain abilities for ownership through money. Back in the days, there was gold and silver. People can hold on to their money. They put their gold and silver in the bank. They got a bank note saying how much they got in the bank. So you had the ability of sovereignty. We're gonna talk about individual sovereignty and corporate sovereignty, family. Corporate sovereignty as it relates to property. I keep trying to tell you, when we think about all of this, I want you to think it's estate planning on a global scale. When we talk about treaties, it's all about estate planning. When we talk about contracts, it's all about estate planning. I don't know why y'all hung up on a secure party creditor, and I get it. I get it. But when you understand estate planning, you know when you are the creditor and you know when you are the debtor in certain relationships. It's automatically come natural when you understand this process. So let's get into some of the stuff. Let me pulling up incorporation. And one of the things I want y'all to understand is the doctrine of incorporation as it relates to property rights. I want you to understand when you incorporate something, when you say, a lot of y'all saying, hey man, we government, and you incorporating under an entity. I want you to look at this and understand what you're doing. So let me hit the share and let me break this down for y'all, right? Let's look at this. Let's look at this, right? Let's go into looking at this. Okay, there you go. Okay, we talking about to incorporate, to unite one thing with something else already in existence. Incorporated the letter into her diary. To admit as a member to a corporation or similar organization. To cause to merge or combine together into a united whole. To cause to form into a legal corporation, incorporated a business. So you got to understand individual sovereignty, individual sovereignty. So let's go. I want to go to the definition. I want to go individual sovereignty. Okay, meaning, meaning. Moral equality. Individual sovereignty is a moral equality taken into a logical conclusion. The concept of self ownership and the same as an individual sovereignty because the individual sovereignty derived from the universal ethic and its premise of human equality. It does not imply that a sovereign individual may do anything he please. What they talking about under sovereignty, individual sovereignty, meaning you bear the fruits of your own labor. So your labor is an asset to you. So remember, I'm gonna show y'all. You go to the IRS, right? You go to the IRS, right? You become human capital. You become human capital. They got the IRS Human Capital Office. You become chattel. They give you what they call is a commercial, a legal person. A legal person is you are in possession of. You are now a part of the public trust because that public has entrusted you with their property. The Social Security card and other legal documents that you are in possession of. Now, you are now a state actor by your intent by taking possession of these things. So 9/10 of the law is possession, the 1/10 is trust. So when you take possession of somebody else's property, you are entrusted to care for the property and follow the law because the law follows the property. So when you guys tell me, hey, I incorporated it, the IRS gave me an EIN number, right? And now you got to understand the tax revenue codes and the relationship to their institution because they allowed you to do what? Incorporate under their infrastructure. And you say, hey, King L Bay, what's going on, man? I'm trying to get some business done here, right? You're trying to get some business done. I'm just on a marathon right now. I've been dropping a whole lot of information on the people, trying to get people to understand this stuff as it relates to property rights. Everything is about property. And what I'm trying to get people to stop taking this notion on, hey man, I just want to discharge debt. No, build your world, right? Let's look up the word world, right? Build your own world. Mm. Jesus tell you to be in it but not of it. The earth, a region or of countries. So a earth, the earth. So we got to look at some of the legal definitions. Let's look up the legal. Hmm. See, we think certain things because we don't understand the legislative intent. We don't understand what the world means as relating to another person, right? In the legal system, the legal system really. So you're supposed to create your own heaven on earth. You're supposed to create your own world by understanding what you're doing. I don't feel like going and cracking open my Black's Law's definitions, but we got to be very careful about the words that we're using, right? And I gotta drop these jewels on y'all to help y'all understand what I'm talking about when we keep putting this money, you know, trying to figure out money and finances and everything because we don't understand. Because we think that a lot of stuff, they use these terms and they say, well, you own this, you the legal owner, you this and that. And you actually believe that you the owner. So let's see if they got all the different types of owners. Corporal ownership. Corporal ownership is of that object which is tangible in nature. Okay. Incorporal ownership, sole ownership. There's different types. Where is it at? Kinds of ownerships. I'm trying to get it. Oh man. No thanks. So, co-ownership, legal ownership, equitable ownership, trust and beneficial ownership, vested ownership, contingent ownership, absolute ownership, and limited ownership, right? And it breaks down all the different forms of ownership. Corporal ownership is of that object which is tangible in nature. Example, land. Corporal ownership is that which is intangible by nature, copyright, reputation, and etc. When a property is owned by only one legal owner, is called sole ownership. A person owns a car. When a property is owned by two or more legal owners, it's called co-ownership, joint ownership, partnership of business between three parties. Legal owner is the legal claim or title to an asset or property. Therefore, a person who has legal ownership on a property can transfer it to the ownership to another party. Example, a lender who has lent money for a property is the legal owner of the property. Equitable ownership. We do not consider equitable ownership a true ownership because it is only the benefit of the property that the buyer will use and enjoy. Example, Mr. X is the legal owner of the property and Mr. Y is equitable owner. Mr. X is not entitled to use and enjoyment of the property, whereas Mr. Y doesn't own the property but has the right to use it, something which Mr. X cannot do. As echoed, Mr. X is not entitled to use and enjoy of the property, whereas Mr. Y doesn't own the property but has the right to use it. Hold on, if Mr. X is the legal owner of the property and Mr. Y is the equitable owner, right? Oh, Mr. X is the legal, then Mr. X is not entitled to use and enjoy the property, whereas Mr. Y doesn't own the property. It's something which Mr. X cannot do. So, okay, so Mr. X is the legal owner of the property and Mr. Y is the equitable owner, right? Okay, so Mr. X is the legal owner. Then Mr. X is not entitled to use and enjoy the property, whereas Mr. Y doesn't own the property but has the right to use it and enjoy it, something which Mr. X cannot do. So we can look at that as a tenant, landlord, and tenant. The tenant has the right to the property and enjoyment. The owner just owns it and has the benefit, don't really have the benefit. He gets the money out of it. So we're talking about one who has control over the property and one who has benefit over the property. So the one carries the legal burden, like the landlord. He has a legal burden over the property to fix it, do all of that to it, while the tenant has no legal obligation other than what's in the contract. Trust and beneficial owner. Legal and beneficial owner belongs to an entity who has specific property right, use, and title and equity, but the property belongs to some other person. Example, if Mr. John property is transferred to the trustees to hold for the benefit of the beneficiaries. It is not Mr. John's trust that owns the land or shares, but the trustees of Mr. John who own it. So their name will be used as trust and beneficiaries, right? So go over this one more time. Trust and beneficial ownership. Legal and beneficial ownership belongs to an entity who has the specific property rights to use and title and equity, but the property belongs to some other person, right? So if Mr. John's property is transferred to trustees to hold it for the benefit of the beneficiary, if Mr. John's trust, it is not Mr. John's trust that owns the land or shares, but the trustees of Mr. John's who owns it. So their names will be used as the trust and beneficiary. So you gotta understand what's going on. Vested ownership. This is where you got a vested interest. According to law, vested ownership has a complete and full ownership on the property. Example, two people sharing ownership of a property. If one dies, the other gets the gain of vested ownership of the property. This is where the government has a vested interest because they have shareholders, right? Contingent ownership. Contingent ownership, the owner does not have full claim to the property, but he can claim it on the full fulfillment of the condition. These conditions are two types, namely conditions precedent and Condition subsequent. Your sister got, I ain't got no paper. Condition precedent is where the fulfillment of its title is complete. Condition subsequent whenever of the fulfillment of the title already completed in existence. Absolute ownership. Ownership is a free, transferable, and inheritable property. A person can have his actual rights, example, mortgage of some property by its owner, right? Limited ownership. Limited ownership is the ownership that is absolute or perfected, where the owner enjoys the right and use of the property for a limited period of time as long as some other person is alive. So, this is the thing that you got to understand when reading your contracts. You got to understand what's going on. Most of y'all buying homes, y'all ain't reading the contract. You're not the homeowner. You are the grantor turning into a tenant, right? You are a tenant, and then until they say you pour off the paid off the mortgage. But what's so funny is you incorporated under the state. You are a resident. So when we look at the word res, right? Res meaning in trust law, legal, res, okay, Latin for thing include movable and immovable and real property. Is also to be subject matter of a trust or corpus. So res mean trust, property. Corpus mean property. So when we start talking about res, and then you are res ident. This is brief for identity or identified. Identification. Short for identification. So you are a resident of the trust. You are property of the trust. So when you are a resident of the state, you are property. So you got to understand, under the law, you are considered a thing. And I told you now you are property, personal property, and now you are property of the state. Now I was talking about this earlier. Confidence game. See?
Y'all gotta get y'all messed up. Girl, what are you doing? Y'all gotta clean y'all beers and all of that. Oh, put that back. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll open it.
Come on.
I'm finna clean up.
Confidence game. A swindle in which the victim is persuaded to trust the swindler in some way. Right? Confidence game. We've been swindled. And we have to be understanding what's going on under these confidence games. Because they tricked us into believing certain things by using legalese to build our confidence, by giving us words to believe certain things, and then they turn around and say ignorance of the law. Because what they truly saying is you fail to ignore the law that come with the property. That you misconstrue public property or public controlled property for your own property, because you're not the owner of how you think you were the owner. So they build up your confidence and told you, hey, hey, right? And y'all started to believe this information. Confidence games, right? You see what I'm saying? So we're talking about confidence games. We're talking about let me see if I can play this.
I will,
like this
I will say
Constitution. Let me see. Hold on.
I will say the next thing I say may be mind blowing.
Let me see where I get this. Let me see. Where did it go? 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 I posted on my page, right? I posted on. So I want to share this video.
Capital letters. United States is a federal corporation of the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia was set up in 1790 and was fully chartered in 1801. Now remember, there are three constitutions. You have the 1787 Constitution for the United States of America, and the 1789 Constitution, the Constitution of the United States, and you have the 1790 Constitution for the United States. The 1790 Constitution of the United States is the Constitution of the Washington, D.C. municipality. It is a corporate constitution, an independent, international, city-state run as an oligarchy by members of Congress.
So I want y'all to understand, right? You have to understand what you incorporating under, right? So I want you to understand this as it relates to what you understanding under this video, right? Because it ain't that long.
United States is a federal corporation of the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia was set up in 1790 and was fully chartered in 1801. Now remember, there are three constitutions. You have the 1787 Constitution for the United States of America. You have the 1789 Constitution, the Constitution of the United States. And you have the 1790 Constitution for the United States. The 1790 Constitution of the United States is the Constitution of the Washington, D.C. municipality. It is a corporate constitution, an independent, international, city-state run as an oligarchy by members of Congress. It is an offshoot of the federal United States. Citizens of the Washington, D.C. municipality and its franchises are debt slaves. By franchises, I mean if you call yourself a driver under the vehicle code, a citizen under civil statutory law, a resident under the domicile. Let's talk about United States citizens. The first we have.
So I just wanted to share that video, right? So that y'all can look at this and start understanding the doctrine of incorporation, right? And I want you to keep in mind, right? I want y'all to understand. Hold on, what I do with the what I do with it? Privileges. Let me go. What I do? Incorporation. We ain't talking about. So let's go Incorporation. Now I want to, now I don't want to, I want the old definition. Let's see, definition. Def, now I don't want to, now that definition don't want to pop up. Now that definition don't want to pop up. See how the process of constituting a company, city, or other organization as a legal corporation. But I wanted to go back. Let me go back. Let me go back to history. There we go. Now you see how crazy that is, right? Incorporated, right? To unite one thing with something else already in existence, right? So you incorporated your corporation under this. So you need to understand what goes on with you and your private rights and what you have the rights privately to do. Private. So private rights are protected. Fourth Amendment protects. Let's go to the fourth and fifth. The Fifth Amendment protects the right to private property in two ways. First, it states that a person may not be deprived of property by government without due process of law or fair procedure. In addition, it sets limits on traditional practice of eminent domain, such as when government takes private property to build a public road. Under the Fifth Amendment, such taking must be for public use and require just compensation at market value for the property seizure. But in Kelo versus City of London, 2005, the Supreme Court interpreted public use broadly to include public purpose of economic development that might directly benefit private parties. In response, many state legislators passes laws limiting the scope of eminent domain for public use. So, what we got to understand, right? Private rights are protected. So, if you incorporate within a private jurisdiction, right, you got to understand that certain things, like a will is not incorporated under a state, right? A will, a will. Let's go to a will. Or not incorporated. Wills are personal property. Incorporation of documents into a will. Doctrine of incorporation by wills and trusts is not really about documents. Let me see what that pulled up. For decades, a debate raised in legal circles about which document was better, wills or trusts. members of the public didn't really know the difference, but there was a perception that trusts were more complicated and expensive and were primarily for wealthy people. Those who favored trust told the story of Ellen. Ellen's husband, Joe, died. Ellen found that most of the family property was in Joe's name. Joe had a will, but because the property was titled in Joe's name, Ellen first had to go through probate in order to be able to use the property. The probate process seemed a drag on and was pretty costly to Ellen. Even had to go to court to ask the judge to allow the estate to pay her some money for daily living expenses. This was a huge embarrassment for her. Trust advocates went on to say that one way one way this headache could have been avoided would have been have using a trust instead of a will. Okay, when you leave an inheritance that is accompanied by instruction, it's typically done in the form of a trust. In this case, an incentive trust. The key difference in incentive trust, other types of trust, is that rather than provide outright distribution, but trust assets are used to encourage or discourage certain types of behavior in beneficiaries. Trying to see. I don't feel like reading all of this. Um, Let me see. Let's go. Let me see if I can.
A trust is a legal contract in which property is held by one or more trustees, typically you and or your spouse, for the benefit of one or more beneficiaries. The Revocable Living Trust acts as a will substitute and contains instructions for managing your assets during your life and also upon death. A living trust is created during your lifetime and becomes effective immediately when you sign it. Because a trust often contains specific instructions to cover a variety of life events, it tends to require more counseling time with your attorney and may be more complex than a will. It often costs more as well.
So we talk about a living trust. And I talk about this, right? All of this stuff from treaties and everything ain't nothing but estate planning.
Estate planning is counseling. Work with an estate planning attorney who listens carefully to your hopes, dreams, and goals for yourself while you're alive and for your loved ones after you're gone. Ensure that you are able to leave specific instructions for what should happen to you and your loved ones during your lifetime if you're disabled, as well as instructions for what happens after you're gone. Consider available protections for subsequent generations and ask about the impact of taxes on your plans.
Okay, family. So, the thing that we need to incorporate into this, I'm talking about incorporating how you incorporate within the trust and how you can use a private trust. Got nothing to do with the state. Got nothing to do with anything. And that when you create these LLCs, they're owned by these private trusts. These corporations that's in the public, right? They're owned by private persons. And you are indemnified under that. And there's trustees that run this. And this is where the employee parts come in and all of that. So you have to be understanding how this stuff really works and all the intricacies and delicacies with this information. That's why I say it's a lot of disingenuous information out there, and just beware, buyer beware, because when you get with King L Bay, one thing I'm trying to do is put together ironclad contracts. Ironclad contracts. Ironclad contracts are a term of no legal meaning a contract which considered strong as iron and hard to break. This is an advanced summary of a forthcoming entry in the Encyclopedia of Law. So, ironclad contracts. You want your contracts to be ironclad, family. Hard to break them. So, when we talk about ironclad contracts, just be considering this information. I then did a series of videos today, dropping a bunch of information. When you think of everything, I want you to look at a trust as a contract. When I want you to think about a treaty, I want you to think about a contract. When I want you to think about a will, I want you to think of it's all contracts. The contracts got to be ironclad. You got to understand the specific nature of what you are doing based upon a churn of events that you're trying to dictate and plan throughout everything. Your children should be a part of your estate planning process and they should be property of the trust. This is contract rights as it relates to the law because I keep trying to get people to understand the the law follow the property. They tricked you into believing everything you own and you don't. So you start assuming that you own a whole bunch of stuff and you really don't own nothing. Go. Hey, Riri and Nana, go to Nana. Go to Nana. I want y'all to understand that. So if you think at everything, this is the key. If you look at everything as property, this will help you to discern and think about this. Who property is it? Is it mine? Did I create the property? So if you say I didn't create the property, so now you got to look at the contract to determine what your rights is associated with the property. And since you didn't write the contracts, this is what most of the time, this is what the Indians went wrong. They didn't write the treaties. So since they didn't write the treaties, guess what happened? Someone else wrote the treaties and spelled out the terms and conditions under the contract. We are in the same position because we're not reading the contract. You can renegotiate any contract. If you get a social security application, you can scratch out stuff, you can put stuff in there, you can do stuff, and if they accept it on its face with all of that on there, guess what? That becomes a part of the contract. You always get a copy. You certify the record. You have a notary or somebody witness the stuff that you initial and cross out. They attest to whatever contract you in. Listen to what I'm saying. It's all about the contract game. It's y'all are so not understanding this information as how it works. It's contract, and property. It's all estate planning. Don't waste your time trying to go through all of these processes. Understand and make it simple. That's why they say KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Right? You want to keep it simple, family. You don't want to overburden yourself with all of this stuff. At the end of the day, what they enforcing is nothing but a contract. And property, the law follow property. I just hear so many people. If you get a trademark, if you get a copyright, you get a copyright and all of these different things, right? You believe, right? You believe, I'm trying to find back. I'm trying to see. Why I can't never find what I'm looking for? I'm looking for it. Hey, Riri and Nana. Hey, Riri and Nana. Now, one time, have y'all looked at her? She got all this chocolate over her. Get her. Now. What? I want y'all to incorporate. Go ahead. So a lot of y'all say, hey, King LB, man, we got a government. We got this. We got this. But you incorporated under these entities. I've talked to y'all about a master trust. Master trust. What is a master trust? A master trust is a type of trust defined contributions, pension schemes that lots of different employers take. Each employer has his own section. So we got to understand a master trust. A master trust is an investment vehicle that collectively manage pools of investments. So they got different types of master trusts. I talked about a master trust. A master trust. A master trust. We talk about everything as a master trust. So remember, when we're talking about employee, we're talking about a master-slave relationship. So an employer and employee. So what you got to understand is how this stuff works. Understand all these different components to understand when you incorporate what you're really doing. You're coming into something that already existed. You incorporated the law under that state, and that state law is now embedded in that corporation, cannot be removed. So this is King L Bay dropping this knowledge on y'all head, man. Dropping this knowledge. It's all about three simple things: estate planning, property rights, right? I want y'all to understand it's all about property and then contracts. That's it. If you understand estate planning, where you start planning your life out from A to Z, you look over your contracts, and then the property, the contracts control the property, and the law follow the property. That's it. Keep it that simple. Do not convolute your brain with all of this other information. It's just complicated information. You're trying to read through all of these codes. Just understand this. If you keep it simple, it'll be easy and give you clarity. If you keep it simple, if you try to discern all of this information, it's clouded. If you understand that the property that you in possession with, did you create it? Did your people create it? And then you have to look at, okay, if I didn't create it, how do this work? And so since I didn't create it and I didn't put it in a trust, what's going on? So automatically antennas should go off and say, I don't okay, since I didn't create the property, what is my status is relationship to this property? And that's what they talking about. When we talking about status and standing is on equal footing. In order to have standing, right, they got to know your status in relationship to the property. And this is where the problem. People think because they use the term owner. You just assume that you own everything you got in possession, and you don't. This is why you need a license to operate the automobile. If you truly own something, you don't have to ask nobody for nothing to drive something that's yours, that you created. You would get it through your thick skull. The trick of the devil is to make you believe that the devil didn't exist, because why? I tell people the devil is in the details. The devil is in the details because you're not trying to keep it simple, because they tricked you into believing a whole lot of things, gained your confidence, and they saying, well, you ignored reading the contract, so we don't know what to tell you. You didn't leave all this legal garbage, so now you stuck. They're not saying that you're ignorant to the law, like you dumb to the law. They're saying that you ignoring the law, you ignore the law. So we got to understand what we incorporating under, and we got to understand all decisions we make under this term. So, like I said, once again, let me pull this up. I don't know why. Incorporate. To unite one thing with something else already in existence. So when you incorporate, you already united something to your corporation as a part of that. Just like how the states were incorporated under the Constitution. So when you incorporate your LLC, it's a part of the state. And the state got the superior authority. So understand this as it relates to what you're trying to do. Like I said, keep it simple. If you keep everything under estate planning, meaning that you got to understand trust and wills. Then you look at everything is contracts, and then you look at everything property has to be controlled by contracts. So if you look at everything as property, even contracts are considered property. You can't lose. Peace and love. I'm out.